My name is Rob Horrocks, and I'm interviewing Krusher, Joule on Saturday the 26th of March 2011. So great, thanks very much. First thing I'd like to do is, like when you're on the radio, do an introduction like, "Hi, my name's Krusher Joule,"
Yeah.
you know, so that we've got something to introduce you with, so that I can edit together nicely.
Okay.
So just leave a little gap after I finish, and then do your thing.
Okay, my name is Steve Krusher Joule, or Stephen Krusher Joule. I've been working in the rock industry for probably the last 33 years, and I've done everything from designing album covers for Ozzy, Sabbath, Maiden, Gary Moore, Hawkwind, to merchandising for AC/DC, Motorhead, Robert Plant, to doing presenting radio shows for BBC, TV shows for ITV, and being the host at Monsters of Rock, and also the Ozfest, as well as the Ozfest in America.
Okay, that was the longhand. What I'd also like to do is the 2-line version, and start with hello or hi,
Right.
and then just your 2-line, you know.
Right.
So that kind of thing.
Hi, I'm Krusher. I rock hard, I rock heavy, and I rock animal.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Might do that again at the end.
Okay.
But that was pretty good. So I'm going to go through some of the stuff which is already on the website.
Yeah.
To get the story behind them. And the first thing that I put on the website, I put the full set of the Diary of a Madman stuff up.
Right.
So tell me about your design for the Diary of a Madman album.
The design was the roughs that I came up for for Finn, the photographer, and for Ozzy's management were based on really a Hammer horror type feel scenario. Originally, it was to have like the classic Frankenstein castle background with the door smashed open, and Ozzy, basically a close-up head and shoulders of him looking manically into this old ancient book that obviously was his diary, and being fairly excited or disturbed by what he sees. And that was the basic idea. And then Finn built had the Hammer horror set built, but it became more of a full scale Ozzy in the whole picture with his son in the background, and it was basically to show that Finn kind of took over, and it was his idea of some kind of development in Ozzy's life. I think it was at the beginning. At the front he's fairly tattered, and on the back he's in a glorious, brand new suit.
Okay. Did you do the logo? Did you design the logo?
What
the classic Ozzy logo?
No, I didn't.
Right.
I bastardised it for Speak of the Devil and Bark at the Moon, but no, I didn't do the original logo, and I feel very sorry for the guy who did, because he would have been ripped off royally, as everybody who's had anything to do with design for the Osbournes, including myself.
Right. Okay.
But it was a brilliant logo, and funny enough, you should say that, because during one of my attempts at communicating with Sharon during the last few years, one of my PSs to her was, by the way, go back to using that original logo, because it's fucking brilliant. And the ones that you're using now are piss poor compared. And funny enough, on the next album that came out, the logo's back.
Okay, right. So the Born Again album.
Yeah.
Let's have some. That looks like something that you drew.
Yeah.
And you're actually wearing the t-shirt now.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
let's have some story about the.
Well, that was a whole.
And just when you start off, can you mention the Born Again album right at the start, so that you don't have to have me saying, and now Krusher's going to talk about Born Again. So.
When I was asked to design the Born Again album cover, it was shortly after Sharon had managed to get Ozzy out of the managerial contract with her father, and also off her father's label. So she was taking over on Ozzy's management, and she got him a new record deal with Epic, and that didn't go down well with her father, who was against it 100%. But Sharon being Sharon, she managed to get the right lawyers, and how, I don't know, but she pulled him out of the contract. And so, from what I could tell, Don Arden was trying to take some sort of revenge or get even by getting Gillan to join Sabbath, who he was still managing. He was still managing the remaining elements of Sabbath. And the idea was to get Gillan in, and on paper, I mean, it still it still is. Ian Gillan singing for with the original three members, bass, drums, and guitar of Sabbath. It's got to be good. The sad thing was it was just the mixers of the album that let it down. But anyway, so apart from getting the band together, then Don decided that he was going to basically get everybody that was working in Sharon's camp. And at that point we were all working towards Bark at the Moon, to work for his camp. And so I was asked to come up with some designs for Born Again, and I knew Bark at the Moon was coming up, and I was like, I want the Ozzy cover rather than the Black Sabbath cover. So I just came up with 4 very, very bad, rough ideas. One of which was the baby with the horns and the fangs, and I can't even remember what the other 3 is, because once you give in the rough ideas, they are just very rough. They're more, I imagine, to just get thrown in the bin afterwards. But Don Arden particularly liked the baby, and then he had a meeting there was Don, his son David, Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler. And Don said to them, "What do you think?" And Tony was like, "Yeah, it's all right." And Geezer Butler was like, "It's shit, but it's fucking great." And Don Arden was like, "You're right, it is fucking great. It's so great that I've already had a baby costume made for a dwarf to wear on stage with you." And so suddenly I get the call saying, "You're doing the album." It's like, oh God. And the rest is history.
That's brilliant.
And they also, it was sent, a printer's proof was sent to the hospital Sharon was having Amy, the baby, her first baby with Ozzy. Don, as some kind of cruel, fuck you, sent a printer's proof to the hospital with congratulations on your newborn, with that as the, and
I've heard a few stories about Don Arden in my time, but these are people that he's doing business with.
It's his daughter.
That's his daughter.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Well, he sent his son down for 12 months.
Okay, right. Onto the Port Vale concert rough.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's several stories associated with that concert. Black Sabbath pulled out.
Yeah.
The guy who was organising it was extreme. And this is probably another story of camps, isn't it?
Actually, you might know more on this than I do.
Okay. So, well,
Because,
you talk about your design work for
well,
that.
I was approached.
But again, can we just, if you introduce it? Yeah.
The heavy metal holocaust at Port Vale. I can't remember what year that was. I think 81 or something like that. But I was working, doing a lot of work with Motorhead's management and merchandising company, and this project came up, and I was asked to go away and just put something together with the fact that Motorhead and Sabbath would be co-headlining, so to speak, which I did, and I'm afraid I didn't. I probably was told the politics, but I just cannot remember what it was. But suddenly it went from Sabbath playing to Ozzy playing to the point where it must have been fairly late on, because they had the tickets printed, and the tickets still have Motorhead Black Sabbath on them. But as to why and what happened, I can only imagine, it's something to do with Sharon taking a dislike to Doug Smith, Motorhead's management guy. But maybe you know more.
Okay, I'll leave it there. I just know that the guy who's promoting it says, next time Black Sabbath appear in this country, it will be in court. So okay then. The Born Again, we've kind of done that. That's T-shirts. Although, did you have anything to do with the Heaven and Hell artwork?
Yes, I did.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, not the album cover.
Right.
But it's like a pentagram or something with Black Sabbath and
and
not
that's
the Henry.
That's a program.
Devil. That's right. Yes.
Yeah, the program. So could you talk
and
about?
It was also used.
It was used consistently, wasn't it?
On the promotion for Born Again.
Yeah.
As well. Again, which I didn't get.
So it's kind of like a circular.
It's a circular with the two triangles, and each space actually fits a letter. And I used the runes to, so you got the, the proper alphabet letter and then the runic alphabet between them. And that was used for the Heaven and Hell tour program. And then for the Born Again poster promotion, record company poster promotion. And I've seen in various bootleg T-shirts, hoodies, for years, ever since.
So what was the thinking behind it?
What? Do you know what? It was. I really couldn't tell you. It was just one of those ideas where I was just playing around with shapes and stuff. I was quite into the runes at that point, and just suddenly realised the two triangles together actually presented the right amount of gaps to be filled, Black Sabbath. It was almost perfect.
Okay. I'm going to go on to the Malvern Winter Gardens poster, which is obviously gives you a bit more of an opportunity to talk about your young musical odyssey.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic item that you've saved. We're so lucky that you had the foresight to save that. So it's going in the exhibition.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about seeing Black Sabbath at Malvern Winter Gardens? Was it 30th of May 1970?
That's right.
Why you retained the poster and the ticket, and how it says that you got it signed.
Yes, it is. Twice.
So
I told you. Yeah. Okay. On May the 30th, 1970, I went to Malvern Winter Gardens to see Black Sabbath. It was being put on by the Lansdowne Youth Club. It was 8 shillings and 6pence to get in, and for most events at Malvern there was a poster for sale, although this particular poster wasn't done by the usual people that did the posters. But I bought one, and at the end of the gig I gave it to one of the security guys to see if he could get it signed, and it came back, and if I remember rightly, it's signed by Bill Ward and Geezer Butler and Tony, but I'm not sure if Ozzy signed it, but I know that Tony has faded, because I used to have it on my bedroom wall. But in 1998, when I did an interview with Sabbath for their final shows, or the reunion shows at the NEC, where they were going to record it. God, I forgot what I was going to say now. Let me think.
I think it was about doing it signed.
Yeah, so I had to do this interview about these gigs, and I took the poster with me, and for some reason Bill wasn't at the actual interview, but the other three were, and when I pulled it out, all of them were like, whoa, do you remember that one? That's when we first dropped acid on stage. And I said, can you sign it again? And the only one that was reluctant to sign it again was Geezer. He said, it's already signed. I said, yeah, but sign it again. And it was signed again. And at that same interview, when I finished the interview, I went out, and this is one of the rare occasions when Sharon was nice. She said, what are you doing next summer? I said, I'll probably be signing on as usual. She goes, no, you're not. You're coming out to America with us as the compere and DJ on the main stage at the Ozfest. So that was a nice moment. Made up for not getting paid for Bark at the Moon.
Okay, that's great. So what about the gig itself? I mean, you just dropped
Right,
a little nugget there about what they were up to.
Yeah. No, the gig itself was awesome. There were two gigs actually at Modern Winter Gardens. I can't say there was one bad gig I ever saw at Modern Winter Gardens, but there were two that stood out and were quite life-changing. And one was the Black Sabbath gig, and the other was Taste and Deep Purple. And both of those were like, kind of put the nucleus in my brain that someday I'm going to be involved in the music industry. I don't care what, how, where or when, but I am going to be involved in the music industry. And that's exactly, as I say, that must have been the initial start of that nucleus building into a bigger thing.
Okay, what about, can you remember anything about, what they played that night, whether there was an encore? Was Ozzy, I'm trying to find out at what point he started doing this.
Yes, no, he was
thing,
doing, and I tell you what, my God, he was jumping around the stage, it was like an electric frog at points. He really, all of them were absolutely, Tony's a bit cooler, but Geezer and Ozzy, they were really throwing shapes. I guess at that point it probably would have been the songs from the first album and from Paranoid, and that would have been it. That would have been the set that it would have been from those two albums. But I can remember the song Black Sabbath. I'm not sure if they might have started with that, because the rain, which, going back, when you think about it, they must have had a reel-to-reel tape recorder to play that, as opposed to all the digital stuff. But I just remember it was mind-boggling, just to the power, and also because it's quite blues orientated in parts, and I was very into my blues at the time, and I just remember it being the mix of the heaviness of their their originality plus these elements of blues stuff. It was like, that's so clever, that's just excellent. And the same with the Taste and Deep Purple thing. That was because Taste, three-man show comes on, little Vox amp on a chair, wooden chair behind him. They do their blues orientated set. They go off. I go to the bar for a drink. Come back in. There's a wall of Marshall speakers, strobe lights. This guy's swinging his guitar around his head, which happens to be on fire. And I was thinking, wow, this is a bit different from the first act. But, it's both of them. Well, all three bands, that was it.
Okay, there's two things I want to pick up on there. First is the blues thing, and then I'd like to go on to sort of your path towards the main stage at Ozfest. Getting involved in music. But it's one of the things in home metal which is definitely a story which we're featuring, is that there was a certain point in 60s Britain where serious young men started listening to the blues, and that led to Cream, and it led to and then that fed into what you saw on stage at Malvern Winter Garden. So as a blues fan, sort of, can you talk a little bit about that stage of British popular music history?
I tell you what, I was just slightly too young to get into the way that the guys in the year above me at school, they were all into their blues in a very big way. And I remember conversations on the bus where they'd be talking about, the classic blues people. But I do remember I bought a compilation album. I can never remember the name of it. And again, it must have been the late 60s, and it was a white vinyl. It must have been like one of the first coloured, and it had everybody on there: Howlin' Wolf, B.B. King. It also had a few really Taste were on it, but it had a couple of, what the hell is that doing on here? Must have been record company related stuff. But I can remember that compilation and a couple of other albums that I had, but most of my listening to the blues was round at friends from schools. As I say, the next year up, you go round to their place and they'd have all the albums, and as you say, the Cream and all of that was happening. But as I say, I was into the blues, but certainly not to the historic sense that the guys who were a year above me were. But I knew what it was, and I knew that I liked it. And there were elements of people that were using it and breaking it apart and putting it back together, like Captain Beefheart and people like that. It was if you didn't have the blues, you didn't have heavy metal. Full stop.
That's really good. I can see myself using that somehow. So yeah, I'm really interested in your story, your professional story of development, and what led to what, and so on. Because these days, on Friday I gave a lecture. I didn't give a lecture. I was in a room contributing to a lecture of music industry students. These 18-year-old kids who are doing a BA in media and communications, and there's a music industries option on that course. And I just thought, this is weird. This really is weird, because I used to run a record label, and that's why I'm qualified to be in that room and give advice and stuff. But you didn't have that. No. You didn't have an enterprise allowance scheme that enabled you to start up a creative business or something like that. So how did it come about then?
I was actually very, very lucky, in so much as I studied fine art for 5 years, 2 years at Hereford, 3 years at Goldsmiths, and they failed me at the end of it, even though I did do the painting Fuck Art, Let's Dance, which, if you put that expression into Google now, about 1.5 million hits come up. Look at the images, it's been ripped off on everything, t-shirts, badges. But anyway, I did that, and then I was so fucked off at being failed that I applied for a job at the local newspaper, which was the South East London and Kentish Mercury, They were looking for a graphic designer to do adverts, in-house adverts for them. And I got the job. And through that, I worked for them for about a year. And through that, I then met a girl who actually, she picked me up, Cheryl. I didn't have much choice in the relationship, to be honest. But she was a diamond, but her parents were extraordinary people. They were obviously South East London, but they'd lived in America for a long time. Her mother used to get Christmas cards from Bob Dylan every year. And I never quite got to the bottom. And he was involved, one with Total Oil, and the other, he was very high up in the boxing world. Put fisticuffs. And one day he just sat me down and said, look, what do you want to do with your life? I said, I'm quite happy just going on as I'm earning money now. He said, well, what if I said to you, I'll set you up with your own studio? Do you reckon you could, do it? And I said, well, I'd certainly give it a go. And that's basically what he did. He set me up with my own studio in Campbell Road. And he said, right, I'm going to give you some work from Total Oil, right? Now that'll cover your rent and stuff like that for a year. But it's up to you now to earn money to take my daughter out and keep her in the lifestyle she's accustomed. So I just got a portfolio together and literally phoned every major record company, every small record company I could find a number for, and got basically told to fuck off by all of them, apart from one called The Label, which was run by a guy called Krusher, a guy called Tony, I can't remember the second name, but the third partner was Dave Goodman, who was the original producer of the Pistols, Sex Pistols. And Dave had a project called Dave Goodman and Friends, and a single coming out called Justifiable Homicide. And they asked me if I'd do the cover, and I said I'd love to, and I did the cover for that. And then I got I tell a lie there, actually, no, the first cover was for Eater, the punk band Eater, and they were doing a live EP called Get Your Yo-Yos Out, which I did. And then from that came the Dave Goodman one. Then I was doing some stuff for a band called Tribesman, a reggae band. And all those little bits added up, so suddenly I had some record covers that I'd actually done in my portfolio. And then other people started showing a bit of interest. And didn't get a lot of work, but one of the people that was my hero design-wise was a guy called Barney Bubbles, who did everything for Stiff Records and Elvis Costello, and just a genius designer. And I got hold of his number and called him up and said, would you be interested in looking at my portfolio? And he said, certainly, bring it round. Took it round. He was incredibly positive about it. He said, look, I have these little meetings once a fortnight where I just invite friends, we go down the pub, we get pissed, and we just throw ideas at each other. Would you like to be part of it? I said, I'd love to. So I attended a few of those. And then one day he just phoned me up and said, look, I'm up to my eyeballs, I've got this job come in, I can't take it on, but I think you could handle it. It's the tour program for Blondie, their Parallel Lines tour, the one that where they took off. And I said, okay, I've never designed a tour program, but I've designed. I'd had jobs for like travel agents doing brochures and stuff. I said, yeah, I'll do it. And that was for Motorhead's management. They also had a merchandising company, and because that went well, I then got Motorhead's first ever tour program, and about another 4 Motorhead programs out of that. Ted Nugent, Sammy Hagar, Girls' School. There's a whole lot of stuff that was coming out of Doug Smith's office that I got involved in. And through that, I met Finn Costello, because he was Rush's at the time official photographer, and he was doing something with Rush, and Eve, Doug Smith's wife, had recommended that he have a look at my work, and he did, and we did this. It was a book of Rush lyrics, the original hand-lettered lyrics by Neil Peart, and a series of photographs that they'd chosen from Finn's collection, and it was just it's a pure fan thing. I think it was called Rush the Complete Works or something like that, Volume 2. I'm not 100% sure on that. Anyway, because that went well, Finn had been approached to do the Direct Madman stick, and he said, look, I'd love to have you on board, come up with some ideas. And that's when I came up with and from then, that was it. You know, once I'd done that, things just started rolling.
Okay, so that's great. So basically you had a benefactor, really.
Yeah.
You know, this guy, so you, as you say, set
Barney,
you,
Barney. Sadly.
Well, no, I mean, I was talking about your girlfriend's dad.
Oh yeah.
And then Barney, and didn't Barney Bubbles work with Hawkwind as well?
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
He did.
I knew I recognised his name. I'm going to start winding it up now.
Yeah.
Like the longer I do, then the more work I've got to do.
I know.
And I've got exactly what I wanted
Right.
with those artefacts. But it did occur to me that, you know, that experience of being compere at Ozfest, and in the exhibition we're trying to get across this idea that, well, it's not an idea, it's a fact. This music is the most enduring popular cultural form that there is. You know, it's not as big as hip hop, but it's gone global. It's splintered off.
It'll last longer than hip hop.
It's splintered off in all these many different directions. It's got a momentum. You know, it's still going. And you must have looked out from that stage at Ozfest and seen that. You know, seen the evidence of that. So I don't know. I'm just looking for you to talk about Ozfest in that way that we might be able to use to sort of demonstrate that it's here. It's keeping going. It'll be around forever, and it's global as well. That's the really important thing.
The thing about Ozfest was that, and you know, this was almost 30 years to the day of having seen Black Sabbath at Modern Winter Gardens. I'm walking on stage at 11 o'clock in the morning at West Palm Beach, Florida Stadium. Which was one of the smaller gigs, only held about 20,000. And I'm just thinking, me, you know, this is like, it's full circle. Almost 30 years later, I was at the gig that put the nucleus in my head, and now I'm walking out on stage in front of 20,000 people, where the band is headlining tonight. And that was quite and I've talked to Ozzy about that, and he goes, yeah, never give up on your dreams, because they will come true, but most people do give up on them and just take whatever they feel they can cope with. But the Ozfest was, oh God, that was, I mean, I'd done Monsters of Rock and stuff like that. You just get up and you're doing maybe 20 minutes, and not even that in a day, talking to the crowd, but I was doing a lot of talking on this. You know, I had to go on after every band, say who's over on the main stage, you know, flog the merchandising stalls. I'd tell a few little stories, and it all built up into an act, and which would be after Slayer had finished playing, I'd go on and say, right, you know, any of you people heard of the Royal Family? And they'd be like, yeah. I said, any of you people actually like the Royal Family? And some of them, they'd be like, yeah. I said, well, personally, I think they're a fucking waste of space. And because I'm over here and I don't want to go back to England, I'd like you all to join in shouting, fuck the Queen. And they did. And the best was at, oh God, what was the place? It was just outside of Los Angeles, 65,000. Being filmed for television, and that was the best fuck the Queen ever. But Sharon didn't like that, because Sharon wants to be Lady Osborne and her husband to be Lord Ozzy. So that she allowed me to do it for the second year, and then when we came over to England and we did the Ozfest in 2001, and I did it with the crowd there, that was my final nail in the coffin. He'll never work with us again. He's jeopardising our royal friendship. But you know, she got the 50th anniversary, didn't she? Black Sabbath played the Jubilee, the Queen's 50th Jubilee. Sabbath fucking played it. So she's definitely hoping it's going to come.
Okay, I want to give you a break before you talk to Johnny, because I want it to be nice and fresh for that. When, 50 years' time, if someone's listening to this, they're going to want to know how old you are. So can I just ask for your date of birth?
Yeah, 11th of the 4th, 1954. I'll be 106.
Okay, and there's this last declaration for you to do, which is you just fill in your name on this sheet, and that gives us the permission.
Right.
But you don't fill it in, you just read that out. So
right.
My name is
Steve Krusher Joule, and I give Home of Metal